Welcome to the Enlighten Up podcast, where I am going to take you into a deep exploration of what it means to exist in this current reality. We are going to raise your vibes, open your mind, expand your heart, and dive deep into the wondrous mysteries and possibilities of this lifetime. There's been a spiritual catalyst that has set in motion the awakening process of many across the globe to return to the knowingness of self and unite what has been separated. Together, we're going to bring light into that darkness. We're going to remember the joy of living. But most of all, we're going to turn up the volume of our own eternal power and do the thing we're here to do. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Enlighten Up podcast. How are you all doing this evening? I am joined again by Matt Gottesman, who is a fellow podcaster, The Hustle Sold Separately, and he's got a Substack called Permissionless that helps you break free of the system, utilizing business, spirituality, and personal development. Matt, it's good to have you back on the show. How are you doing?
Doing well. That was perfect. Thank you. I was like, how do you sum me up in 2 seconds? I appreciate you so much. Thank you for having me come back on your show.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you here. Well, I've been watching you, following you on Instagram, and you've been posting a lot about NFTs and crypto and the blockchain. And I just thought that would be a really great topic today to get into because a lot has kind of come up in our world recently where it's kind of showing how this new system that is birthing is not allowing the old system to just jump aboard the way they
Right.
thought they could.
Right. I don't, we can jump in anywhere. I know we had spoken offline about some of these topics, and it's a very transitioning time, and I think part of the conversation that we had was that you have like this intersection, right, of an older way of doing things, which has, by the way, been sparked by many, many years of doing them. And I think they've been embedded into culture and systems and business and medical and education and all of these areas, right? And we're witnessing also a newer, rise, if you will, of just a new era of consciousness and spirituality and technology and innovation and creativity and just a different way of doing things. I don't think it's anything new. I mean, historically, we've had a lot of transitioning times that, sometimes we're a little bit messy in between, a lot actually, right? And so, what do we know about anything that wants to remain the same or keep control? It doesn't usually go lightly. And that's, I think, what makes it so messy is, and that's why they say the quote, absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? It doesn't let go, and it doesn't certainly go without a fight. And so I think we're just kind of witnessing a time of like a lot of breaking down of systems, and business is a big part of it. And I love business and I love spirituality. And I think that we can have win-win scenarios. I've been preaching it for only like 8-9 years online. Um, and, and so I think that that's kind of also where, when you hear me talk online about crypto and NFTs and Web3, it's weird because, and we can dive into it, we can go further, but really there's why blockchain and Web3 was essentially, for the most part, what we understand, created, which actually has a lot of a spiritual tone to it. And for a lot of autonomy and sovereignty and ownership and, accountability built into it automatically from the top. It's almost like a restructuring of the internet because it was the wild, wild west for the last 25 years. Right. And so when you see why this was constructed, And then we also understand, well, what do we know about, you know, sometimes the old ways of doing things? Oh, there's a new toy. How can we use it for our gain financially and for control?
Exactly.
Right. But going in, oh, go
Which
ahead. Go ahead.
is the whole reason why the system was created, so that can't happen.
Right. That's exactly it. So that's where we were like kind of laughing for anybody listening. You know, that was where we were laughing a little bit, not laughing, but like that's the whole point. It's an interesting. It's like I think we use the analogy of the Titanic. You have a bunch of people, you know, who are sinking with the Titanic, pretty on the outside, sinking on the inside, and they're jumping off and going, "Oh, I'll just gravitate towards blockchain. Look at all the money that the people are making." But that's not like money and finance and crypto are a subset of blockchain. And I think that's part of the problem. I think sometimes it's the misunderstanding of like, well, what is blockchain and what is crypto and what are NFTs and why is this all happening? And then you can look at it both from a technological feat, a business feat, or a spiritual one as well too, because there's a lot of accountability and transparency and ownership built into and fundamental principles that were guided as like, oh, hey, we reward people who are, you know, the good actors of society. When I say good, I mean like, you know, with integrity. And that if you try to game a system or cheat it or do all kinds of things, it doesn't work in your favor. So it was built on a foundation automatically like that. While you have a bunch of people trying to jump into it and use it for the wrong reasons, that's going to be interesting to watch, right? And so I think that's where we were kind of going on that. We were going on a little bit of a tear offline, and
Yeah, I don't know. Well, because for one, I didn't know too much about NFTs, and I was
mhm,
kind of curious to learn more about them and kind of what the
yeah,
possibilities are and how you see them kind of changing the way, like even content
yeah,
creators are able to put their information out. Because obviously, we're dealing with censorship and just information being removed in general, and
yeah,
how this kind of prevents all of that from happening. And I'm sure, because like so let's get into
yeah.
that because that's really interesting. I mean, a lot of my audience is very familiar with the censorship and the removal of content on the internet. How do NFTs play into that
You know,
with the blockchain?
there's a great quote, um, and I'm trying to like pull it up in real time, but it was it's saying that the internet is bad for creative people. Web two is bad, or it says the internet is not bad for creative people. Web two is bad for creative people. And why it was so interesting, what that means is that, and I literally just had to write an article about this. Let's talk about Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3. And we'll break it down very, 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 very simply so we don't get too techy and get all, but like, what does it really mean for us and where we're heading? And especially because a lot of people that what you're just talking about, censorship or content being taken down or at the mercy of an algorithm, all of these things are taking place in Web 2. You do not own these platforms. You don't own these platforms, and they are private companies. Well, some of them are public, but um, either way, owners of these companies own your work to a degree. Your feed, we all are feeding a machine, right? And
Yep.
if we, use the wrong word or use the wrong thing, or that doesn't fit into like the sensitivities of intermingling emotional triggers, which I think is really happening globally. It's just like everybody's emotional triggers in a lot of different ways are really just kind of commingling and kind of colliding. And everybody wants to be heard, which I understand. And everybody wants to kind of like be acknowledged, which I understand. And everybody wants to kind of like say, like, no, this is more important. No, this is more important. And so all of that has made it very confusing on the web. And so people are just getting deplatformed and stuff is taken down. That's an issue with Web 2. So what happened is Web 1, for everybody listening, is just that we started in a world, in the 90s, cases made from like 89, 91 till about 2004, 5-ish. Web 1 was you go onto the internet to read something, whether it be maybe an email or some general information, nothing more. Web 2 started around 2004, 2005, was the concept of publishing. So now we have reading and writing. And I don't mean like email writing, I mean like publishing content. We may not think that we're publishers of content, but we are. Whether you have a blog or a website or your social media, Twitter,
Just your social
social media is
media.
everything, all of it, right? It encapsulated all of
Hmm.
it. That's publishing. And what you have is in that Web 2 has been really, and we're crossing, it's ironic because we're crossing at the same time the intersection between Web 2 and Web 3, which started, Web 3, they say started around 2014, blockchain, crypto, all these things. And I'll get into Web 3 in a minute. Web 2, what we've been experiencing, you know, has been that feeding of the algorithm, has been the feeding of the information. And really what happened is over that time, it got monopolized. You know, it was the Wild West. It was the internet. It was there. It was the infrastructure was very open and there for the taking for people to come in and create companies around it, which they have, and platforms around it, which they have. And along the way, you had everybody put their hands in, right? And what do I mean by everybody put their hands in? Well, you have a merchant service, right? And if you guys sell products or courses or your services or coaching service or whatever online, well, Stripe's going to take a fee. And then when that goes to the account and you got to send it to the bank's going to take a fee. And then, you know, those are just some of those things. Middlemen. This other person over here says, I like your content, but you know what? Only 3% of the internet's going to see it first, 3% of your followers. If it does well, it's the right time of day, maybe I'll release more, but keep feeding us. No problem. You have all these intermediaries. If you're a musician, I read a stat that like is unbelievable. Out of the 8 million artists on Spotify, 14,000 of them make 50,000 per year for all their streams. The rest make less. Mhm.
What?
Now, I'm looking to confirm that, but Chris Dixon of the ventures up in Silicon Valley, uh, he was quoted saying this, and I was looking up some of the stats on it. But I've heard this from a lot of artists in general that like you have to stream millions and millions. What is Web 2? There's Web 2. Spotify's a platform. No knock on Spotify. They built a platform. They said, artists, put your music on here. We pay for so much money per so many amounts of streams. You're on here, and you're on here, and
Mhm.
you're on here. Oh, wait a minute, we have a community. Well, we'll also make a subscription for our users to listen to an abundant amount of music. Oh, we'll also take some advertising dollars from over here and over there and over all these stuff. But you know, here's what we're going to pay you or your labels the money for your music. And so what you've also intermingled during this Web 2 world is a lot of people saying, I need more followers, I need more streams, I need more likes, I need more numbers. The scaling of numbers, whether fake or real, hopefully help justify to drive credibility, traffic, sales, whatever. Hustle, which I get, and all. But so the system got a little quirky, right? This is like Web 2 world. That's just it. Is like, it was just created in a time with that's what the foundation was, allowing and was taking shape, right? Business models. And so what has happened, and I always figured kind of would, is we're moving into a Web3 world where it was built, via blockchain, which I'll explain in a minute. But the concept is to basically like, hey, listen, I as a creator, a musician, a coach, a writer, pick an artist, a businessman, or if you're a businesswoman, or whatever your thing is, basically, you can now work directly with your customer, your consumer, your fan, your follower, whatever it is. And when you create the course or the music or whatever the offering is, you are essentially uploading it into a Web3 world, which authenticates that it's your work and that you can distribute it any way you want,
That's big.
money or no money.
Mm.
And the people who value
Mhm.
your work, your loyal followers, customers, can purchase it directly from you through, the form of, like, let's say an NFT, which is really one of the first use cases that we are seeing with blockchain and crypto and some of these other things, right? Because years ago, when we were talking about blockchain and crypto, people were like, "Oh, it's just a digital currency. Like, I don't get blockchain. It's just some web stuff, whatever." And we just stay in this nice little warm area of Web 2. Um, Web 3 was designed when you guys all hear blockchain, like one of my goals is always like, how do we just simplify, tech? Because when Web 2 came out, it's not like everybody who's using the internet now even really knows how it might work. They might just use it. They just like, well, I just use Twitter. I just use Instagram. You're like, right. Did you know that there's some code backing all of that and kind of, creating, with algorithms and payment processing and security, all these things on the back end. Blockchain was created in a manner where you have independent nodes, NODES, or people, verifying information anonymously in around the world from that look at the information and like mint it online, like verify it, and it's now online, and it then says, hey, this in a public ledger, this person created this, it's their work or trademark or copyright or whatever they created. And if you try to like rip off their work and repost it, think of like an Instagram post. You put out an amazing piece of writing or quote, somebody else tries to upload it. Well, in a blockchain scenario, technically, the idea of verification and transacting in an open ledger system is that won't necessarily work. They won't get verified, right? We're still building up a lot of that infrastructure, but that's kind of the basis of like ownership of our work. And what happened was NFTs were kind of the first use case to understand this concept. By the way, is this like crazy, like wow, like too out there right now, or?
Oh no, like I love it because, it's there's so many applications here
Right,
for it that I think a lot of people in my audience, whether they're wanting to whether they're trying to like maybe just do it like a side hustle, or they're trying to start their own business, or they're trying to, I've got artists and jewelry
right,
makers and all like different writers in my audience. And so if they're trying to sell products and do it in a different way, this is one of the ways that, like you said, one, it removes the middleman, so there's less cost and more, you know, of your money retained versus giving it to the big guy,
right,
and more control. But also, you get to deal directly with your customer, your client, whoever it is that you're dealing with, and everything is
right.
verifiable. But what I really liked too was this idea that people can make money beyond like if they purchase stuff from
Yes,
you. Like say I would have purchased one of your
right,
books, and then and you only like released say a limited amount of
right.
books, and then I want to go and sell it. I can actually make money off of it because now there's more value for it.
Yeah,
And it's like we can all make money
yeah,
together versus just a few people making a lot of money and we're all kind of scrounging trying to make money. Can you go into that? Because I
absolutely,
think that's a really cool part of the whole thing.
absolutely, 100%.
And it's also, okay, before we
Yeah,
even go any further, what I really love about this is kind of, to me, is taking this idea of our human consciousness
hmm,
that is constantly evolving.
it's
This is a
abundant.
kind of a representation of the consciousness of unity,
Yeah,
where we're all coming together and we're all helping one
yeah.
another out.
We're that's exactly. I mean, this, you know, blockchain. The idea of like rewarding, like, oh, hey, you're doing good work and you should own it, and it's integrity driven, and then blocking out the bad actors. And we'll get in. By the way, we'll get into the bad actors and sort of like the people jumping the ship and the businesses that and the entities and whatnot that are trying to take over it, because I think that meshes. Like when you see headlines, you're like, but they want to use it too, and you're like, yeah, we'll get to that afterwards, because I want people to understand, like,
Okay.
there's like, I would say it's a battle for Middle Earth. You have like the purists who are like, it's about sovereignty, leave us alone. And then you have these people who are like, how can we use this and get everybody into one system? And like, so it's a very daunting, because you're on the battlefield and you're like, that's not what it's for. Leave us alone. So but to your point,
Yeah,
yeah,
no, and I think, all of this information can be very daunting to someone who's not
right.
as tech savvy or even savvy with like the idea of crypto, blockchain, and everything that's kind of going on there. So I love like listening to you talk about it because you help kind of
Yeah.
demystify some of the mystery around it through simple explanation. And I do believe that this holds a lot of potential for the future of how we're going to be doing business if we choose. Like if we really want to move into a much more conscious way of doing business, or even publishing, selling, like whatever it
Right.
might be. To me, this does look like a high potential of our future. So
Amen.
yeah, share more about this and how this all kind of will help
Amen. And I
people.
can use some of the examples of your listeners, right? The writers, the jewelry designers, musicians. I can use each of these in a different context. Um, we can start with the book one first, okay? The music one is usually very easy, so we'll do that one second. But let's say right now, um, in a web 2 world, people, they may look like they have millions of followers and they may try to get a lot of followers, but are they really engaged, and are they very loyal fans that believe in the products and services the person are putting out? And it's going to be very interesting when you see some of these influencers who are already starting to find this out, that in web 3 and creating NFTs, or items that are a good store of value that other people might want to acquire. What does that mean? Well, okay, instead of me just self-publishing a book on Amazon for like $20, which Amazon will happily take a huge chunk of that, again, web 2. Well, let's say, what
70%.
is it? 70? Wow.
Yeah, if you're selling over 9.99 for a book, they'll take 70%.
Wow, I didn't even know that. All right. So I knew it was high. I just figured it was like closer to 40 or 50. Okay.
Yeah, you've got to stay within a certain price range. I believe it's two. They may have changed
Wow.
it recently, but as far as I know, because I have published a book on
Yeah.
Amazon, it was if you stay between the 2.99 and nine
Yeah.
ninety nine, you get 70% of the
Okay.
income coming in. But if you go below or above that, you're screwed.
Wow. Okay. So,
Yeah.
so on blockchain, okay. When you're on
Mhm.
web 2, when you upload, you had to upload all those files. Here's the cover, here's everything that comes with it, etc. Great, no problem. Same thing on web 3. You're doing the same thing. You're uploading all of your files. Only it's a blockchain site on the back end, which just means that it's kind of like minting and verifying your files. It looks like it's Dropbox. You're just uploading them. And when you upload them, you also say, hey, listen, this NFT, here's like the cover art of the book, or the, of this particular NFT. It's the receipt that they'll get when they buy it. And, I'm only going to issue 5,000 of these total. And besides the book, I'm going to actually include all of the illustrations as artwork. I'm also going to give you 15% off anything else I create, books or merchandise that come along with this, for the next 3 years, or until 2025. And we also have like an in-person event every year. Like, sort of think of like Gary Vee and the V Friends, like, 10% off that conference every single year until 2026. And also, I will send you the first owner, I'll send you, a signed, copy of like a, you'll get your physical copy, right? And it'll be signed. So it's a coffee table style book. It's big, it's nice, it's amazing, it's all this other stuff. And it's one of a kind, like just like you would buy something, in the physical world. And this will be also a physical product related. You go and you purchase the NFT. And besides excuse me, let me back up. The person who created this NFT, the author, says, you know what? I'm also going to tie a royalty into this, because even though you get a digital copy and a physical copy, the digital copy and this whole everything that comes with it, well, you know what? Other people, when we sell out, they may still want it, and if you ever resell it, cool. I have a small royalty built into it. Okay. So what happens? 5,000 people go ahead and buy that book. The book was like, I don't know, $200. I know that sounds wild, but when you think about like all the things that you're getting from it, part of the community, because you can make it anything. You could say like, and you'll be part of my paid community that does these live events. You show up for free because you have a little record of your NFT. You just show up to the events for free. You never have to pay anything. It's like belonging to a membership or a club, right? Well, you sold out 5,000 NFTs at $200, and you just made $1 million, right? You didn't sell 20,000 books. You didn't sell 100,000 books. You may not have become a New York Times bestseller. You may not, all the accreditation, all the titles, all the validation, all the numbers, all the heavy lifting, all of that stuff goes down to, well, do I have my 1,000 true fans? Do I have my 5,000 true fans? The people who really love my work. Now, some people might say, like, why would somebody buy it for $200? Well, let's think about it like this. The Web3 is like the internet of value. It's not scaling numbers. It's the internet of value.
Which I love.
If you own my work and I'm at the beginning of my visible career, I mean, I may be in my career for quite a while, but like maybe, I'm just starting to get big, right? Let's say I'm Gary V circa like 8 years ago and I have my first book coming out and you're like, oof, I love this guy's book. And there's only been 5,000 physical copies generated, sent to me, 5,000 NFTs. I got a verified like first edition. Like I was one of his first people. And the man goes on to become uber famous. You're holding that person's work, store of value, an asset of their work while they're still living. And I know some people, sometimes I get such a stretch to be like, who would want to own my work? Well, that's first of all a mindset issue. Let's back it up. If you were Einstein, and why was it that Einstein's work later on was so celebrated from his earlier years? And like he came up with all kinds of formulas and he had letters to his daughter and letters to all kinds of constituents. And later on they were found and they were worth, tens of millions of dollars and put into a museum. So what's happening now is we're living in a time where people who find value in creators and artists and, business, whatever it is that the person is providing, you are saying, hey, would you like to own some of that work? Exclusive rights to it. And as I continue to get more popular and build, which means I have to keep doing work. So I'm tied to you, you're tied to me. And I keep becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, the thing that you're holding of mine becomes worth more and more and more. Now, here's the kicker. You certainly don't have to hang on to it. With an NFT, man, I miss getting, the download of that and like all the things that come with it. I know I can't get the physical copy of the book because it was only for the first issuers, but I would love to buy your NFT. I know some people think like, does that really exist? What's going on in the secondary market? There are people, including myself, like NFTs from people who already own. And I was like, you know what? I want that. There's only 5,000 of those available of that. That owns it. We're allowed to get a physical copy of the canvas of our NFT in person. I love art. So you can, so a person that owns my work can sell it. And when they sell it, let's say they bought it from me for 200, they sold it on the open market for like 500 or 1,000. I know that people are like, no way. It's happening. It's already happening. Sell it for 1,000.
And if you had a built-in royalty
yes. So let's talk about that. So they sold it for $1,000 worth of Ethereum or another coin or whatever. You can cash that out if you want, or keep it in that crypto. So you got a 5x return. That's 500% return. Now, selling it for 1,000, there's an automatic royalty built into maybe people thing called smart contracts. All smart it's taking a difficulty that we experience as business providers in the Web 2 in the physical world and automating that world. What do I mean by that? Has anybody listening ever had to go track somebody down for an invoice? Or, oh, hey, like you did this and you owe me money for that. Or, oh, hey, like I see you transferred that deed or you did, this thing and like I need that, information sent back to me. I need that bill paid. You have to track them down. And sometimes we're like, oh, I'll get back to you. Or, oh yeah, no, we will hopefully soon, whatever it might be. Right. A smart contract is just basically code built into the NFT. Basically is doing all of that for you. So if you sell an NFT, it says, oh, this is the new owner. Was made. 10% automatically goes back to the original creator, or 5% or whatever it is that the person put into a royalty. And I never have to contact anybody. It automatically shows up in the wallet. Okay. So you can see how that could be all of a sudden wait a minute, like, can we do this with real estate? Yes. Oh, wait a minute. Can we do this with restaurants? Yes. Can we do this? Like it's things that you can use the utility of an NFT. So beauty of, you can either sell it and a second more is like, oh man, like I really wanted a Nicole Frolick like NFT. Like I wanted those like her first editions. Like especially as you do more work, like, oh, collections, like I do have one of her like, I actually really wouldn't mind purchasing that from you, and so people can make offers. And I get offers all the time openly on these markets for my stuff. It's usually not selling, I'm holding on to these things. So, because I believe in the creator, I believe in the person who made it, the artist, the writer, whatever. And because they got a solid community, and they're doing more and more projects, and their work is becoming more and more valuable to me, in my opinion. So I want to hang on to it. It's a good store of value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I really love about this is because this is kind of, and I hope the audience is grasping where we're going with this, because and how it relates to the evolution of our consciousness and just how we operate here on this planet in general with one another. It's truly transforming things, because we live in a mass consumption society. We are just overly consuming. I talked about this on a podcast recently that I just did on my own about mental obesity. We've gone from like food and material consumption to information consumption. And now that that's all happening, what usually happens when we're going into mass consumption, the value of whatever we're consuming is highly diluted. And
Yes.
it's not as powerful and as potent as it could have been if we weren't in mass consumption. So what this system is doing is it's actually bringing back that strong
Reversing it.
value, where the value is not diluted anymore. The potency
Yeah.
is super high, and everyone who's interested is determining the value, not some big corporation, because they've got all the money and the marketing power to shove it down your throat and say, this is what you want. And
Right.
we're gonna dominate the airwaves with this particular song, and we're gonna make this artist really big because we're gonna force it, like, T to listen. Like, to me, this is kind of really transforming all of that.
Yes. That's honestly, that's so well said. So the entire audience listening, she's 100% right. It's just reversing um value and showing where good value is, it sustains, and anything forced down us and commercialized and overconsumed is going in this system. Potentially it's being reversed, and it's no longer the mainstream headlines and all kinds of stuff will always show from some of these interesting NFT launches and whatever, and like JPEGs and all these things, right? So that's why I always like want to kind of bring it back to exactly what you just said. It's just an idea of value. Perfect example of exactly what you're talking about.
Mm.
I can show you how consume less, maximize value. And what I
Which I
mean,
love. Who doesn't
right? So
love
there you go.
that?
Right. So like, what if we consume less but maximize value? And because consumption usually means acquisition, right? And more. But what I'm saying is, like, what if the things that you consume the most drive the most value? Almost kind of like the 80-20 Pareto principle rule. Like, what if like 20% of the value is coming from, or 80% of the value is coming from this 20% of stuff over here, and that's it. You don't need much more than that, but it's driving so much value. Everything from health and wealth and all the things that you need, money and abundance, everything, right? So here's a perfect example, right? Let's just break it back down. We'll use the music example. There was a gal that was on one of my podcasts, who she had like 65,000 followers on Instagram, and everybody's kind of dealing with the Instagram algorithm. It's actually gotten quite worse. You really have to pay to play just to even
Substantially.
get. Yeah, it's actually gotten really, really interesting. But we'll move away from that for a minute. So she has about 65,000 followers, and she was talking about the Spotify game and all this stuff. It's like it's a lot. She's like, these artists, like that do millions, like, I get completely overshadowed. And I said to her, I basically said, what if, like, do you think that you have at least 5,000 people who committed to buying your album, right? You can see me, right?
Oh, yeah, I can see you.
Okay. Your camera's disabled due to slow internet. So I'm just making sure. So, but,
Oh,
so like, let's say, I told her, I was like, do you at least have 5,000, subscribers or followers or people that would buy your album? She's like, oh, of course, absolutely. I'm like, okay. what's this new era that we're living in? I was like, let's just say you made a cool new album and you album artwork, each song in there, maybe like 20 songs. And you said, you know what, I'm going to build into this smart contract. No matter what, anytime you log into, purchase any of my merchandise, automatically it'll see, well, you'll also get 15% off all of my merchandise until 2025. And you know what? Anytime you show up to pay for a concert, because you have my NFT, it'll automatically connect the wallet and say, oh, you have an NFT? Take 10% off the concert. It's not going to be $100. It's actually $90 or whatever, and you can build in all kinds of benefits, right? So, and she's like, that's interesting. And I'm like, now let's say you put that up for sale for like $250, because they're buying all of this stuff, this value of you, for, because they're really committed to you. They buy for $250. And she's like, okay. And I'm like, and you sell them out? She goes, yeah. And I'm like, well, instead of like millions and millions and millions of streams, hundreds of thousands of albums, hundreds of thousands or millions of streams on Apple and all this other 5,000 copies for $250. Congratulations, you just made 1.25 million. And she's like, oh. I'm like, who are you paying? And that kind of hit her like, oh shit. And I was like, do you understand? You had a product. The customer bought it directly from you. The follower, the fan, the person bought it directly from you. I should do that motion, but like that person bought it directly from you. And right, like watching or listening, yeah. Anyways, you bought it directly from the creator, right? From the artist. And so yeah, she might have like some people who like worked on the sound and like some other things, whatever. But like imagine like all those middlemen fees are gone. And it's all like documented online. In terms of not in like an eerie way, like in a like a ledger system, like, hey, like, no, this is her work and this is how she did it, and these are the this is that she actually sold real numbers. You can't fake streams, you can't fake sales anymore, influence anymore. But isn't it nice that to know that you don't have to, like, you can just sell 5,000 albums to your diehard fans, less consumption, even though I know it's like a digital good, although she can also create it to physical too, but like less consumption, maximized value. That album is like really, it's great. She comes out with her next album, maybe just won an award for like her music, a Grammy or something. Oh my God, like I wish I had her first album. So if people are seeing this online, like why did like, certain, Nas or some of these other artists or Snoop or other people who like offering some of their music via NFTs, is because they're recognizing this. They don't have to sell it for, by the way, for $250. They'll sell it for $5 or $10, whatever. But then like the next one they launch has some more benefits and it's worth even more. But it makes the first, one that ever, was launched also worth more. You're now having a closer, integrated, conscious relationship with your true diehard fans, your subscribers, your followers that are like family, and they're owning your work as you're continuing to do more of it. And so that's, I think, what's the exciting part. And like, and it's exclusive. It was less. It wasn't actually more. The reason we got into more so much is because we became a society like that was like numbers. And I don't get me wrong, I understand why it was set up that way, but it became less about quality, more about quantity. And you ended up having a whole kind of in frequency around that. And then it was like, what happened to like agencies and record labels? Well, how many followers do you have? And then it became, and you see this not just in music, you see this in like writing, you see this in modeling, you see this everywhere. Well, how many followers do you have? It's like, well, what if I told you my 5,000 followers make me $5 million a year while your 100,000 followers make you zero, right? Because that fulfillment of products and services, to highly engaged followers that love what you do is way more important than the way you look out in the outside world. And again, this is what blockchain is all kind of about. It's like you put your work up, people are going to really pony up, and there's an example of a gal, I don't really know what happened fully yet, and I forget, she's famous. I don't know if it's internet famous or just famous artist or how it was, but like 15 million followers. she did an NFT project where it was like, you own one of like 5,000 or 10,000 different like versions of something that she created, and had all these promises and all these things that it was going to do and everything that happened afterwards, sold them out, and immediately, took down like 1 million, and immediately like abandoned the whole project, is like no longer working. So her fans, so the owners of that are like really upset. Why? Because owners now are more invested in your work, and we're hoping for all these things. You can't just be like, yeah, I don't think this is going to work for me anymore. It's like, well, and so you have to be also careful about like the things that you launch. You have to like, it's got to be kind of a part of your body of work. It doesn't mean that you have to be doing that the rest of your life or anything like that. It's not like she did it, that the project itself will continue to do all these other things and then left it. And
Yeah.
great, you got paid. And now these people on the open market trying to sell them to get out want less for them. They go down in value. If you pretty down
Well,
in value,
yeah, I was just going to say,
lack of
this
ethics.
is where
Yeah.
integrity becomes very crucial. And you
Yes.
can't get away with living with less integrity, because that's part of the value. That's part of, and the way I see it too is it's wonderful because we live in a world that, just it's on to the next thing, on to the next thing, on to the next
Right.
thing. We can't
Yes.
sit still with one thing. We don't spend enough time to nurture it, to really help it grow. And this kind of forces that. And I think just in general, our society needs that, like desperately think it needs that kind of attention where we actually put attention back into the nurturing
Our work.
of something, helping it grow, fostering it, putting the energy in, putting the work. I was listening to a podcast this morning and just kind of talking about how long it took for this person. It's a world renowned brand. How long it took for this brand to become what it was, and it wasn't just within a year or 2 years. It was like 20 years later, finally made its breakthrough. And I think we just have this misperception of how much work it really takes to be successful at something, and we're all like, well, if it doesn't happen in that instant gratification moment, then I must not be meant to do it. It must just not be meant for me. And it's like, well, no, you're the creator. You determine if it's meant for you. Like, put the onus back on you, which is what I love about this, because this is the idea of sovereignty, personal sovereignty. Everyone wants to say, I want to be sovereign. Well, when you're sovereign, responsibility comes with sovereignty. You need to start acting sovereign. And so you start to see where a lot of the old system, we'll call it like Web 2.0, created a lot of conveniences for us where we gave away our sovereignty and we don't need to work as hard. Someone else is doing all the work for us, but making way more money. And, we're just kind of sitting here taking like the scraps. So if you want your sovereignty, it comes with a bit of a price, but not the kind of price where you lose your freedom. You gain all your freedom, and then you get to determine everything that you're going to output and everything you don't want to output. So there's a lot of beauty behind that, but I think it forces us all to become a lot more responsible for ourselves, a lot more integrous around our work. And I think that we can also bring back that idea of, putting that value in. As a creator, I really like the idea of having that personal control. And I don't say that just from an idea of needing to control, but it allows me to be more in tune with my own creativity, because now I'm not overworked trying to pummel out, like, when I just think about social media, the idea of having to post on social media, like, takes energy away from me because I'm like, there's so many other things I could be doing that I think are of much higher value. But because, we've got this thing where you got to get more followers, you got to like reach more people. And it's like, and I understand that. I think if you're in the business of helping people, the more people you can help, the better. There's nothing wrong with that. But I also would like to work with an audience that is truly connected to my work and not just there for the fluff of it. You know what I'm saying?
100%. It was so well put. And hang on, sorry, it's making me reload my web.
Oh. Okay, we're still recording. I've lost Matt, but he's going to be back. I think his internet connection just
I'm
Here he
back.
comes. He's
I'm back.
coming
I'm back.
back. There
I
you are. You're back. All right.
I have no idea why I did that. I don't know.
No, we're good. Keep going.
Okay,
Keep
cool.
going.
No, I love everything you just said because that's the conscious side. That's the integrity side. That's the emotional intelligence side. That's the value side. Ownership, accountability, like the things that some of the fundamental values that have kind of gotten abandoned over time because of instant gratification, because of manipulation, media manipulation, to credentialism, to all of these things, like positioning people, getting into positions where maybe they didn't deserve it, but then like taking a payday, like all of these things, which has really happened over so many years in the business, not just in the Web 2 world, but in business and in like intermingled with a lot of other things, right? We're seeing it across all kinds of industries. you know we've gotten so far away from a lot, maybe not we, me and you, but like society in a lot of ways has kind of gone away from that. And so I think that's sort of the love I have for what I believe is happening in blockchain. And when I say what I believe is because, again, we'll get to like what I think other actors are trying to do to get into blockchain and Web3. But it's to your exact point. It's like, oh, hey, what if we slow down for a minute and really focus our attention on high value activities that are of service and value, right, to the people that we serve. And we do it in a manner where we're really about the details. We're really about the work that goes into it. And we're really about all of, the responsibilities that come with being in business. Like, even if you're an artist, it doesn't matter. You are running the business of your art, or you are running the business of your writing, or you are running the business of your life, of how we earn money, or how we in general grow within any given thing that we are called to do, right? And so you brought up a very good point that we can have whatever we want so long as we work for it, and it has to be earned. And I think that we sort of at some point society got a little out of hand with showing like, here's how you can get it without earning it. And i I feel like just like that, like with anything, it's not a sustaining characteristic, right? At the end of the day, I think of things like that as that is not a sustaining
I
characteristic. And one of
love
the
that
things,
you just said that.
well, and
I love that
I'll go ahead.
that is big. I hope people understand that is not a sustaining characteristic.
Well, it's great. It's
Can you
listen.
just elaborate on that because
Yes,
that's powerful?
I will. I know there's a lot of stuff going on right now, and it can get you on any given day. It's pretty, sometimes it's some dark shit. You know what I mean? Like it's pretty wild. What do we know about history? And we might have talked about this before, but like, what do we know about history? Light always wins. Light always wins. Dark can make a mess of things, and it has, and it does. That's just what happens. But light always wins. Um, Greed, or a lack of integrity, or dishonesty, always, it's not sustaining because it always catches up or it implodes. It's because, like, let's just use greed. Greed doesn't know how to stop. It's not stoic. It's not grounded or rooted in principle, or having principles. It's not, having grace. It's, I need more and I'll do whatever I can to like make this happen. More control, more this, more all these things, whatever, right? And what happens from that is that it'll keep going without knowing when to stop. What is somebody who like is like, oh, I've done well, I'm good, you know what, I'm just gonna keep, giving more any way I can. Like they're rooted in their good, like their character. They know how to, some of the best businessmen and women I've ever been around, like they weren't emotionally charged by validation or more or this deal or that. Like they were just like, oh no, like I'm good. In fact, if anything, they did even more so because they weren't that way, and they were very generous, which produced more money or more abundance for them. But in this case, greed will always kill itself off at some point. That's why they say, like, wolves eat their own, or like, or like a dog eat dog world. Well, they'll all eat each other at some point. Like, because it's just not a sustaining characteristic. It'll do anything to keep trying to like chase after sustainability, but it's not a sustaining characteristic. So sooner
Mhm.
or later it implodes. It has no choice. Greed just
And people
will
need
it.
to understand that. I hope the audience understands that even just when you take that characteristic and you apply it to how you are implementing in your life and anything that you're trying to accomplish, if you're wondering why something's not happening, if you're coming at it from that point of view or that level of consciousness, then yeah, it's just not going to work out. It's not going to sustain itself. Well, let's talk about the fact that the old system is not able to sustain itself as it tries to take over this system. We'll close out in this way because this is interesting, and we saw this actually happen with the truckers convoy up in Canada, in how there were a lot of donations that were coming in across the
Right.
world from the States to Canadians, and a lot of that was crypto. And what happened there? Do you want to share with the audience? I know some people are probably familiar with it, but this is just one example of how the old system is getting a really rude awakening when it comes to the fact that they can't do business as usual.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's complicated. So I'll do my best. On one hand, um, the general consensus was that anybody that was donating any money to the Freedom Convoy, their bank accounts could be seized, or somehow shut down or whatever it might be. And that's definitely an overstep in any direction. That's a huge overstep, right? Regardless of how everybody feels. Because it's sort of like, regardless of,
Mhm.
I always stay in the middle. I'm like Switzerland neutral. It's like, just think of it, the bigger picture of like, look, whatever we believe in, whatever you have, imagine that like you're not necessarily the one that's in control of it. Like at any given point in time, someone says, you know what, I didn't like how you bought those groceries today, so we're shutting you down. It's an overstep. And I know people say like, oh, that can never happen. Well, let's not, so it's an overstep. Well, the people who had crypto, one of the things that had come up was they wanted to seize a whole bunch of crypto wallets, and there was a particular hardware wallet called Nunchuck. And they were asking, you will give us this and will give us that and all these things. And they replied, I don't think you understand how this works. We were designed in a way that we don't actually know who they are. Their wallets are, they're in complete control of them. you know there's no way to track them down, or their wallets. Like, they have complete control and ownership over it. It was designed that way. And it's actually a very funny like letter, the way it was like written. I don't have it
Yeah,
really
because it was the Superior Court of, was it the Superior Court of Ontario, or
something like that. Yeah.
was it actually of Canada?
Yeah, no, I think
It
it was
was it was
maybe about
and the court was asking for this, for the wallets and the
here.
information, and I loved the way they ended the letter, because basically, letting them know that when um
Hmm.
Canada's dollar tanks, that they'll be open to letting them use their
So good, right?
their system.
I'm like, I'm so tempted to see if I can even remotely find it, because it was just such a good
Yeah,
letter.
if you can.
you
I
know
know, it was such a good letter, if you find it, because and this is just the whole thing. It's like they're trying to control using the old methods and not understanding that the very system that was created was so this could not happen. And
right.
now they're like kicking and screaming and realizing, "Oh shit, we cannot operate in the same manner that we used to. We don't
That's
have that same power anymore."
Right. And and I wish it would, I wish that was the final story. The complicated part is that um so blockchain is also a public ledger, and you can
Mhm.
see, because it's everything is, transparent. You can see, not necessarily the owner of the wallet, unless they want their name to be known, but you can see like where those wallets, like were, and you can actually see that, oh, all these wallets went into this wallet over here. So they did go and try to find the person, who, because he was a little bit more public about he's the person who owns that wallet, so they can go and find him that way, and then they basically try to seize his
Mhm.
Bitcoin, right, or her. I think it was a guy, but I know it was an anonymous person. I thought it was a guy from what I heard, but and sees that person's account. Now, here's the funny part about like cold storage wallets. If you have money in there, the only way you can actually get in is there's a very complicated seed phrase that is randomized 24 words that only you know. And it's not even that like you have to put them in any particular order. It's just that it can be asked for like, hey, what's word number, 14, or things like that. Like, and nobody like it's designed in a way that nobody else can know, and that's on top of already having a pin, like a complex pin, right? And so what's
Yeah.
interesting about that is that's what they say, not your keys, not your crypto. Like you can't really get into it, so it also can be lost forever if it's not gotten into. But so it still requires a certain level of access that I don't think they accounted for. So and I'm careful with headlines. It's like, oh, he sees this, and it's like, did you? I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
did you really? And
Hmm.
I didn't see it go out of that wallet into your wallet yet, because we can see your wallets too, can't we? So it's like, oh, you seized it. Well, where did it go? Are you just keeping it on
Hmm.
the shelf, or did you have to move it into another wallet? Because we'll be able to see that too. So again, this kind of goes back to the whole like, yes, like that's a bad behavior. That's a bad thing, right? And if they try to do that, and they did, well, okay, well, like, what does that mean now? Like, where are you going to move it to? Because then we'll know where you are too.
Yeah.
So it's you really want like where everybody's on the same playing field. That's it right there, right? So
It
that's kind
does
of a funny,
equalize the playing field.
right?
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So that's an interesting take, and so that's kind of what happened. And I think like when you and I were talking about it's these types of behaviors that I think that they don't account for. What I believe is happening a lot of times is you see crypto and think there's a lot of money to be gained. And yes, there is, but it's not, that's not really most people, most retail, or like people like you and I that are holding crypto are holding it as a store of value, and they look at it as like, hey, it's an asset that's just continuously going up. And you'll hear some of the key influencers say like, it's okay, keep the dollar, like do whatever you want with the dollar, like that's still buying goods and services, no problem. That's a fiat currency. Fiat currency is just a regular physical currency that's used in the physical world, in exchange for the exact price. Whereas, there's just saying that this is a store of value that is going up in price. And it's like, to them, it's like the digital version of gold. That's how they really look at it.
Hmm.
And they're saying we're just storing value and increasing our earnings in doing so. And even some people are willing to trade, that for, other goods and services or whatever it might be. Or, they can, of course, sell it and make dollar out of it as well. And so, you know, but it's autonomous. It's autonomous, meaning like, what do I mean by that? I can take it off the blockchain and put it onto, a ledger wallet, and I can go anywhere in the world, and it's off the blockchain. It's in my wallet. Boom. And I can plug in anywhere I want and say, you know what? I'm in a new place, and I need some of this money. So, hopefully, so long as there's not some sort of restriction yet on that, which I'm sure they're probably
Hmm.
working on.
Hmm.
But like, I can, sell it for that, currency in that particular place, because I know I'm like, oh, I'm going to be living here for a little while. Or I'm going to be more remote, or I'm going to, whatever I need to move about the cabin a little bit here, right? Now, what's happening is, and I said earlier in the conversation, you have this like kind of battle for Middle Earth. Purists in crypto and blockchain, all that, they just want their autonomy, their sovereignty, and their
Yeah.
like this ability to move about the cabin, and like just kind of like leave us alone, and we want to like build value. Okay, like we're still working,
Yeah.
we're still
Yeah.
building, we're not, it's not, but we just want to have something that is growing in value. And what's happening is you're seeing like bad actors come over and say, you know what, first they were fighting it, now they're joining it. And in joining it, they're like, yeah, well, it's a race for innovation. It's a race for technology. I'm like, or a race to see how you're actually going to try to use it for your own good. And, I don't have to necessarily bring out what they're trying to do. I think everybody listening probably has
Yeah.
an idea of what they're trying to do. And also, I'm just trying to be cognizant of like not bringing up those words. But like, that's great and all. But like, I get it that maybe you're losing value in something, and now you're trying to kind of flip it into like something digital and programmable, as in watching everything you do and what you spend it on, whereas this is autonomous over
Hmm.
here.
Hmm.
So
I think
yeah,
we're heading into a time where that is going to be like something that that will be tested. That there will be a big
It'll be
test there
tested.
for that to see
Yeah.
if it actually if it can be kind of corrupted. I mean, I think anything's possible, but I think
Right.
they're in for a bigger fight than perhaps they were anticipating. Matt, I'm so glad that I was able to have you on the show. I hope that the audience was able to understand what we were talking about here, what we're putting down, and kind of the value behind this, and perhaps why anyone who's publishing, creating, selling in business, why this might be something you might want to start looking into. You don't necessarily have to start tomorrow, but you may want to start educating yourself and understanding what's possible and how you can grow this.
Yes.
Where can my audience find you, Matt?
Yeah. If they want to reach out on Instagram at Matt Gottesman, MattGottesman, podcast, Hustle Sold Separately. We are permissionless.com. Permissionless is a term that you're hearing a lot in blockchain, right? None of us need it, permission to do anything that we want, well, for the most part. So you can catch me over there. We are permissionless.com. My Substack. There's two ways to get to there. mattgottesman.substack.com, or you can do www.wearepermissionless.xyz. And I'm going to also come out with some really cool stuff on the wearepermissionless.com site. Like that, it's just a glossary of articles and terms for everybody for all of this stuff. And it's just
Oh,
very
cool.
digestible, very easy. It'll probably be at the URL, wearepermissionless.com/learn by the time this thing comes out.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a great way to say, oh, this is what blockchain is. This is what crypto. This is what NFTs. This is what how you buy it. This is how you sell. This is the safety. This is why people are protecting and security. All of these things, so they can at least
Cool.
get a little bit more information, so we can be, as you said, responsible with. We have the biggest responsibilities we've ever had in our life right now, and I think that
Yeah.
it's not even just blockchain and technology. If there's one thing I would just close out with everybody, is that I think what we're really living through is a time of, it's showing us that we have to be very responsible for our health. We have to be very responsible for our wealth, or how we make money and how we spend it. And, we have to be very responsible, and we have to manage it. I once heard, whatever we want to manage multiplies, right? And our health and our wealth and our relationships, we have to do the work interpersonally on all these areas.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of idea, no one's coming to save us, but you don't want anybody to. I know that maybe people, we want to, because it sucks sometimes doing the journey alone, but we're sovereign beings meant to do the work, and we'll be all right. But we have to be responsible and accountable, and it'll feel better because you'll feel actually less anxious and more in control, because you're I at least feel prepared for different situations because I'm constantly doing the work. And that, I think, is also what removes just anxiety in general a lot of times, so
Yeah. Well, I love it. I love it. If you're not following Matt yet on Instagram, please do. And go check out his Substack, permissionless.com, because I think you guys will really enjoy it. You've got great motivational stuff. I love what you put on. I love your content. You put up very valuable content. And so
thank
you're
you.
definitely walking the walk that you're talking right now. So thanks so much for coming on the show and explaining something that's been a little bit daunting for me to understand. And you've helped me kind of break it down a little bit more. And I'm definitely curious. I'm writing my second book right now. So this is something I definitely want to look into when it comes to publishing that. So thanks, Matt, for coming on the show.
Well,
And thanks you to the audience for joining me again this evening. I love you guys so much. Have a wonderful night, and I'll be back with you guys next week. Thanks again for joining me for another show on the Enlighten Up podcast. I love you guys so much for all of your continued support. So remember to raise your vibe, find your tribe, and be open to the infinite possibilities held in the mysteries that surround us all. Thanks again for sharing the show with your family and friends. And if you're new to the show and you need to find out more information about me, please head on over to my website, NicoleFrolick.com, where you can join my newsletter. And please follow me on Instagram, Telegram, and YouTube. Keep your light bright, and I'll see you next week.